Hey there, everyone, it's Steve Severs for Bionic Buzz. Welcome to Wondercon 2023. This con is put on by the same people from San Diego Comic-Con. Now, before we get started, please help us out by subscribing, liking, sharing, following, and most importantly, comment below about how great my Bully McGuire dance is below. Now, let's go see who we can talk to. All right, so how could you summarize the story for those who haven't seen or look forward to Batman the Doom that came to Gotham?
Summarize the story?
Yeah,
Well,
hard.
yeah, I know. It's like put me on the spot. I feel like, oh, I should have brought a cheat sheet. I mean, it's Batman in a horror movie. It's Batman against an otherworldly god, basically, and facing. It's a story about this Cape Crusader who we all know. It's a different era, but it's still, in essence, Cape Crusader, who is a man of science and a man of logic and reason, just like every version of Batman is. But he's up against something that's completely supernatural, otherworldly, and he's got, in order to have any chance of fighting this thing, he's got to let go of what makes him Batman. And I think that's what's such a cool story in a horror setting.
Yeah, so it's set in the 1920s. Did you have to do a lot of research about the slang back then and stuff?
It's funny, I traveled. I did extensive research. I actually traveled back to the 20s. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, no, I Googled slang for 20s, but I did, you could cheat a little bit. And I watched a lot of things from the 30s, so Three Stooges, like any excuse to watch Three Stooges, the Bowery Boys, or something like that. But it's always something you got to be careful with because it could be distracting, if you're using too many buzzwords and lingo. It's like, oh, he's trying too hard to make it sound like that, because as long as it sounds enough, it's like it's like Thor, and something like that. You don't want him speaking in Shakespearean English or whatever it is. You want to make it enough so it sounds like it could be, but it's not going to distract. So hopefully we pulled it off.
All right. Thank you so much. Keep up the amazing work.
Oh, thank you so much. I love that.
Yep. Thanks.
Okay, yeah. So Kylie was really fun to voice. She is a ward of Bruce's throughout this film, and she sort of acts as his right hand, his moral compass, his conscience. She's a young girl, but she is young but not naive by any means. She is extremely smart. She's very bold. And she is very clever, very resourceful. She offers Bruce a new perspective through life, a new perspective on how to handle humanity, and brings, I think, humanity and empathy to him. She's. But though at the same time she does not lose her youthful qualities, that do come out every so once in a while. Yeah.
All right. Before I let you go, anything coming up you're allowed to talk about?
I have a film coming out later this year called The Supremes at Earl's All You Can Eat. So I'm really excited for that. It's a very heartfelt story about three best friends, and we see how they overcome life and how their friendship survives through it.
Wow,
Yeah.
look forward to seeing that. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
You're welcome. So Sam, for those who don't know, tell us about the story about Batman the Doom that came to Gotham.
Wow, it was hard enough just to distill this down in the writing, to break this down into one sentence. I think it's very difficult. It's a Gothic horror. Yeah, it's 1920s Prohibition era, cosmic horror, Lovecraftian Batman story. I guess that would be
Sounds
it,
fantastic.
without going into details, which I'm prone to do.
Yeah. Absolutely. You've done so much for so long, though. I mean, you've done, how many animated movies have you done for DC so far?
Oh, for DC, I don't know, almost 20?
Yeah. Well, here at Bionic Buzz, we're all about people's passion. Where'd your passion to be a producer, storyteller kind of come from? A certain project that inspired you as a child, or something that was just natural for you?
I think, when you're a child and when you're young, right, these are the things that fed you creatively, right? These are things that sort of maybe, helped guide, maybe the way you think about things, the way you approach things, but also sort of a certain sense of identity, right? There's a lot of wish fulfillment that's in it as well, I feel like, because that's the whole superhero thing, right? So, I think those are the things that kept my interest in it, right? Especially with, I don't know, without getting too much into my background and stuff like that, right? There's identity, there's a lot of identity kind of things that happen to me, especially somebody growing up in the, whatever it is, like the 80s and the tail ends of the late 70s, you know what I mean? That these things always spoke to me, right? An element of sort of like, heroism and all that kind of stuff. But it's gotten a lot more, I think, complicated, right? Because there's anti-heroes now, but even so, I think it's even made the pot more interesting, right? It's but even though they do questionable things, why are they still a hero, kind of a thing? You know what I mean? And even if they are, then what caused them to do that? And is it something that's redeemable or not? So I don't know. All these things are fascinating for me. Like, I love the psychology of these stories.
Me too.
And so that's I'm very fortunate to still be able to do this.
Absolutely. Well, keep up the amazing work. Thank you for taking your time to talk to me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Queen in this movie, the Green Arrow himself.
Nice. Did you bring your own taste to it? Kind of use your natural voice to it?
No, it was because the film is set in 1928. His vocabulary is a little different. Like, they really used him to set the time and place of where we are. So we found an accent that wasn't too overbearing and distracting, but definitely tells us where we are. And he's kind of an older guy, so those two things were the two things that I could hold on to, and then really play as he just gets rip-roaringly drunk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite line from it?
I mean, he gets to say bully, it's pretty fun.
Awesome. Before I let you go, anything else coming up you're allowed to talk about?
I've got, I did an episode of Accused on Fox that's going to be coming up in a couple of weeks, and then I'm playing a really interesting character on NCIS LA. It's coming up in a few weeks too. Yeah, so those two things.
Keep it amazing work. Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.